Thanks for your support as a channel member, Justin Inakaitis. Red Bull's Max Verstappen brilliantly won the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix at the team's 400th F1 event, keeping alive his title hopes, keeping pressure on the McLaren drivers ahead of him. But should the Papaya team have swapped their drivers round to allow Lando Norris to challenge the Dutchman for victory? Hello folks, and welcome to my reaction to the 2025 Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, possibly the last time we see Imola on the calendar in Formula One, maybe ever, because the way the cars have grown in size, I doubt they're ever going to go back there, because they're just too fast, they're too big, you can't really overtake unless you have a massive tyre delta, which we did see this weekend in Italy, and I'll get onto that because Pirelli did a great job in the tyres that they brought, the C6 tyre working really well in forcing the strategy in the race, but we'll get to that later. Max Verstappen took the victory at the old school circuit because, yeah, once you're in front it's very difficult to overtake, and it's even harder to overtake when you run away from everybody else, and that's exactly what the Dutchman did. He pulled off maybe one of the moves of the decade with that just outrageous lunge into turn one. Sensational move. But for me, Oscar Piastri was napping. Very unlike him. Verstappen, he sent it. It was one of those things. If you don't try, you don't know what's going to happen. He went for it. It worked. He could have been bouncing across the gravel. And if it was roles reversed, Oscar Piastri would have been. Let's be honest, Max Verstappen wouldn't have allowed that to happen if he was starting from pole position. But it was a race-winning move, and even when he did make it, I thought Piastri might still be able to stick with him and McLaren might be able to do something on the strategy, but no, Verstappen had the pace. Red Bull with a faster car on Sunday, at least in Verstappen's hands, and I think the predicament Red Bull finds itself in with Max Verstappen being basically the only driver who can drive their car. As much as they'll say it's not tailored to him, it is. It was superbly underscored in dramatic style with the qualifying crash for Yuki Tsunoda on Saturday. Verstappen had just gone fastest of anybody in Sector 1 in the first part of qualifying. Obviously not as fast as he could have gone in the entire session, but still fastest of anyone to that point. An impressive sector time as well. And then just behind him on the track, Tsunoda has an enormous shunt and red flags the session. So that encapsulated everything that is going on at Red Bull for me. Verstappen basically on rails, everybody else drowning. And it's, yeah, it continued to be that fulfilling of prophecy on Sunday. Verstappen just so classy. It was a brilliant drive, really, really well handled. He had to handle the safety car restart, and that brings me to the McLarens, because they had pole position and Piastri got beat at turn 1. Norris didn't deliver in qualifying. George Russell got ahead of him and was poking his nose in it at turn 1. That may have distracted Piastri from the real threat, which was Verstappen. But by the time we get to the safety car, Piastri has tried to do a different strategy. The team have pulled him in early, and it's not quite working out for him. He's now on older tyres and Norris is on fresh tyres. Should they have allowed Norris to move into second place unchallenged at the restart and attack Verstappen? That's the big question that many people will be asking, because they could have won the race. Jacques Villeneuve was saying on Sky Sports afterwards that McLaren doesn't seem to be as aggressive in going for victories. And I think, yes, they need to go for victories, but actually I think they made the right decision. Because, first of all, as I've said already, Red Bull had the faster package. Verstappen wasn't going to be caught. Even if Piastri just moves over and lets Lando through, even if they stay second and third, there's no guarantee that Piastri actually stays third in all of that, because of the safety car restart. They probably won't do it until maybe halfway around the lap, a lap later. By which point Verstappen is already a second and a half ahead of Norris, maybe even more. So with the laps that remained, I don't think it was really ever possible. McLaren didn't have enough of a performance advantage to make it work. And also, the team of stress. The drivers are free to race. If they move Piastri out of the way, it's probably on the basis that Norris gives it back if he doesn't get past Verstappen. So from an Oscar Piastri point of view, I don't know, he wanted to go for the win as well. He wanted to challenge Verstappen, but he was never going to on the older tyre. From Piastri's point of view, it's probably, fine. Let him come past as long as he gives it back. Happy days. I'll have 3 points extra on him and I'll lose the minimum possible to Verstappen. But the situation as it is for Lando Norris, he's actually overtaken his rival on track. Yes, fresher tyres. Still had to get the job done. Wasn't easy, even with DRS, to make sure you got the move done. Eventually, it was a fairly straightforward move. But second place gains 3 points on Piastri. Come the end of the season, that could be critical. This championship could be won and lost by very few points, especially if it does become just really about the two McLaren drivers. Verstappen's doing his best to make sure it isn't, and I have a feeling he's not going to go away for a long, long time in this championship fight. So the McLaren drivers need to ace everything, and the McLaren team need to ace everything to make sure one of their drivers becomes world champion, because there's no point having the fastest car over the season and not having one of your drivers become world champion, especially when they're easily going to sew up the Constructors' Championship, because Mercedes aren't going to have the consistency to stay with them, even though they're second at the moment. Red Bull are basically scoring with just one car. Ferrari are Ferrari. Maybe Williams can catch them, who knows, but they're only on like 51 points or something. So yeah, McLaren are probably going to win the Constructors' Championship. They need to make sure they manage the Drivers' Championship perfectly, make sure it is a papaya driver on top and not Max Verstappen. But obviously Red Bull need to be continuing to give Max Verstappen the best possible car so that he can have days like Imola and days like Suzuka where he can get in front and stay there. So it's very, very interesting. But for me, McLaren were right not to swap the drivers, to let them fight it out, because Piastri might have held off Norris. Who knows? And at least we got to see them go wheel to wheel. So, there was some fun in that. We've mentioned Verstappen. Let's move down on my notes then to Ferrari. On home soil, Saturday, terrible. Sunday, much better. Lewis Hamilton P4, Charles Leclerc P6. Good recovery. Lewis Hamilton actually looked like Lewis Hamilton for once. We've not seen this Lewis Hamilton for a few years. We've seen him very seldom across the last few years. Leclerc, unlucky with the timing of the safety cars and where they fell in his strategy. But also Ferrari did a really good job with their strategy, capitalising on Mercedes and Aston Martin completely falling apart in the race. I don't even remember where George Russell finished. Was it 7th? No idea. That's just how his race panned out. It was terrible, and obviously Antonelli broke down. Aston Martin started 5th and 6th. Were they 5th and 6th? I think they were. Or at least both in the top 10. And they just dropped out of it, which I wasn't surprised about. But something that is continuing to, I won't say surprise me, but please me greatly, is Alexander Albon and his just excellence. It's brilliant to see Albon. Look, Carlos Sainz is a quality driver, and we are right now seeing exactly how good Alex Albon is. Honestly, the guy who left Red Bull and the guy we're seeing right now, basically two completely different people. He has rebuilt himself so magnificently. There are several top drivers in Formula One. He's probably knocking on the door of the top 8 best drivers in the sport right now, if he's not already in that bracket, because you've got to factor in, obviously Gasly's very, very good at Alpine, not got the machinery to really show what he's capable of. Alonso is rather good as well. Ocon is very handy. But Albon and Sainz as a combination at Williams, it's going to be so dangerous this season for them. Any sniff of a podium on a weird and wonderful day, one of those two is going to get it. I would love to see Alex Albon podium for Williams. Really, really would. I'm not sure what their low-speed performance is like, so their chances of Monaco could be interesting. But if they've got strong low-speed performance, Alex Albon podium, here we come. Maybe. But back-to-back P5s for the Thai driver. Love to see it. Absolutely brilliant stuff. It's maybe he should have been 4th, but look, if you'd offered Williams P5 at the start of the race, I'm sure James Vowles would have snapped your hand off. They are having such a great season, and they're focusing on next year. I think we all hope that they can come out with a great car and be fighting at the front. I think Williams back at the front would just be amazing. If they can stay there as well for a few seasons, that would also be fantastic. I mentioned at the start, tyres. The tyre compounds that Pirelli brilliantly brought this race to life. There was a couple of extra conditions I thought played into it. The weather, so it was very hot, so the mediums overheated, and some teams ran into problems and they made decisions based on that. Piastri at McLaren for one. The Mercedes cooked its tyres. Aston Martin chewed through theirs as well. That's why they dropped out. But yeah, the decision to bring the C6 tyre, which wasn't particularly a great qualifying tyre either. It was fast, but I don't think it really sort of stayed the whole lap. The drivers that used the mediums were quick, and that's why the Ferraris got knocked out in Q2. I think if the Astons had gone on the C6 soft tyre, they would have been eliminated in Q2, as you would maybe expect, and they would have then finished kind of where you'd think they would anyway. So their qualifying performance put them in a bit of a false position to start with. But thank you, Pirelli, for being bold and being brave with these tyres. Bring them more often. I think they're coming for Canada, and they'll come for a few more street circuits, but a few more conventional circuits. Bring these tyres, these softer compounds. Obviously, we don't want to see tyres blowing up around Silverstone and fast circuits like that, but where you can, take a risk. Put the teams under pressure and give us that spicy action, because we want to see it. Everyone wants to see it. It's just more fun. If you look back to sort of 2011, 2012, where the tyres were basically made of jelly, and you showed them a racetrack and they melted, it was great. It was absolutely fantastic. You had 3-stop strategies versus 2-stop strategies. You had 4-stop strategies versus 3-stop strategies in some places. It was bonkers. The pit lane was a hive of activity, and you probably don't want quite that many stops at Imola because it's a very narrow pit lane, but very enjoyable race to watch. So I'm going to rate the race a 7 out of 10. It would have been an 8 or a 9 if we'd had a bona fide fight for victory, but Verstappen sort of grabbed the bull by the horns and ran away, which is his prerogative, I suppose. He doesn't have to wait around for everybody else to challenge him, so fair dues. And alternative driver of the day. Max Verstappen was voted driver of the day. My vote would go to Alex Albon, because obviously he's great. He's fantastic. I'm loving this Alex Albon up against Carlos Sainz. Obviously Sainz adjusting to the Williams. Albon very much settled in, but he is absolutely leading that team fantastically. So that's what I think of the race. Let me know what you thought of the race, how you would rate it out of 10, and who your alternative driver of the day was. I'll be back later this week with my Monaco predictions, so make sure you go to the post on the community page and make sure you read all the things that I want to hear about, and tell me what you think is going to happen in Monaco this weekend. We've got a mandatory 2-stop. Could spice it up. Could be just as boring. Who knows? At least we've got the Indy 500 afterwards to entertain us. So yeah, I'll see you later in the week. And yeah, that's all for now. Thanks for watching. You're the best fans. It's bye for now.